Hey art tubers, thanks for stopping by. In a previous video I showed you how to do this piece of artwork and talked about the importance of maybe doing some greeting cards. Well, I thought it was important enough to follow up to show you how you go from this flat piece of art all the way through your printed cards. The process is simpler than you might think, and I'll show you exactly how I do it. Stick around. Probably went into more detail than I needed to. I'm going to go ahead and break this down and give you timestamps in the description so that you won't have to sit through everything if you already know how to do something like scanning in your artwork or color correcting it and doing that kind of stuff. So, hey everybody, if you're new to the channel, welcome. I do appreciate you being here. If you like what you see, please click the subscribe button and make sure to hit that bell notification so that you know when I upload new content. Well, one of my subscribers, after I did this video where I showed how to do this cartoon, asked a great follow-up question about the process of getting the card, the artwork, prepped and then printed. And she wanted to know what the procedure was for that. And I thought that was a really good idea. And so I'm going to go ahead and show you from start to finish what I do in order to get this from the artwork over to the printed piece. And of course the very first thing we need to do is we need to get a good capture of it, a good image. If the piece itself is so large or so bulky that you can't put it in a scanner, then you're going to have to take a photo of it. And that process needs to be kind of saved for another day and another video. But I promise I am going to do that, and I'll share with you how I get the best capture with the most accurate color. But for artwork today, we're just going to use the scanner. It is large enough that it can be used on my scanner, but it's going to have to be done in two pieces, which luckily is not that difficult to do anymore. There was a time when it was quite the process, but nowadays it's a piece of cake. So let's get it in the scanner and get started. Well, this is my scanner, which happens to be an Epson, but since we're going through Photoshop, it really doesn't matter what scanner you use because the process is going to be the same. But the number one important thing at this point is to make sure that your glass is as clean and as sparkling as possible. So just take your image and put it face down on the scanner bed. Make sure that it's squared up so that when you scan the other side, it's going to work easily together. And once you do that, it's time to go into Photoshop. Okay, well here we are in Photoshop. I have a blank document here, but in order for us to be able to scan, we're going to go up under the File menu, down to Import, over to Import Images from Device. That will get you to your scanner. If you have more than one scanner, they'll show up over here and you select the scanner that you're going to want. Mine happens to be the only one that's on this particular version of Photoshop. And I've got it set up here for black and white, but you can also scan text, which will give you a kind of a high contrast, or color, which is what we're going to want. The resolution for what we're going to be doing is 300 dpi. You can get away with less. 240 is probably about the lowest that you're going to want to go. Just make sure that you're set in your resolution for 300 dpi. You're going to tell it where you're going to scan it to. When you do that, you will get a list of your most recently used folders, or you can go down here to Other, and let's say we're going to do that. We're going to tell it, okay, we want it to be scanned into my iMac, my hard drive, and I'm going to take it over onto my desktop. I'm going to put it there. and then you'll find desktop here. We want to put it in a folder that's all by itself. Click New Folder, name it, and create. We're going to click Open on that, and you'll notice Scan To takes you to that particular folder. So let's go ahead and name it. Right side. Okay. And since I have to do this in two parts, I'm going to name it right side and left side. I'm going to format it as a JPEG, and the image correction on it, generally I find that with this particular Epson, it does a pretty good job of getting you in the ballpark, and we can get it the rest of the way in Photoshop. So once we've got everything kind of set up where we want it, what we're going to need to do is tell the computer here where we want it to scan. And so I'm just going to go ahead and scan this full screen and drag it down just a little bit. And so it's going to scan the entire amount here that I have within the marching ants. Let's go ahead and tell it to scan. It's going to go ahead and scan what's within the marching ants, and then it's going to open it up in Photoshop. And there we go. We will go ahead and scan the other half of this document. So let's go ahead and do that. So it's back to the scanner. Open up the lid, rotate your artwork 180 degrees, square it up against the side, back to Photoshop. Okay, so now that we have the first half scanned, let's go ahead and scan the other half. File, Import, Images from Device. It'll take you back over to where you were, and for the second half, all the settings remain the same, but we need to click this Overview, which will give us a pre-scan to show us where everything is. Okay, so there we are. We already have the marching ants here from the size that we've done before, and so I'm just going to go ahead and move this up a bit so that everything is within the marching ants that we need. We go ahead and click the scan, and it'll start that scanning. And just like the other one, it will go ahead and open the new one in Photoshop. Now we have both of these images scanned in. They should be the same settings on everything. And so now what we need to do is we need to rotate this half around. And in order to do that, we're going to go up to Image Rotation, 180 degrees. So now we have both halves of our image. We're going to have to save them so that Photoshop is ready to go with them. So you save it the way you would any file in Photoshop. You do Command S for save. All right. And so now what we're ready to do is go ahead and merge these. To do that, we go up onto your File menu, down to Automate, and over to Photo Merge. That'll bring up a new screen. And this is wonderful in that you can tell it what you want it to do. But really, for all of the times that you're going to be doing this, you'll go into Auto. And you want to show it where your source files are. I happen to have both of my source files open, and that's what we're going to do. Down here, you're going to want to tell it how to handle the files. We're going to blend the images together. You're going to click the Add Open Files, and it knows that these files are there because we saved them off before we came into this. If you don't save them off, it's going to tell you that you need to use saved images. And so just go back, make sure that you click Save, and then you come back here, click Add Open Files, and they should be here. If you happen to have more files open than what you want, they will show up here as well. You click on that, and then you click remove until you just have the files that you want to blend. Once we have that, click OK. Photoshop will do its magic. And there it is. Now, if I come over here and show you the layers, there are two layers where they've taken the left side, they've taken the right side, and they found a pathway, masked them out, and put them both together. What I like to do now, well, first check to make sure it looks good. I've never had it not work well for me. So yeah, this is perfectly fine. So let's go ahead under our menu here and down to flatten image. All right, so now we've gotten our image just the way we need it. I think what normally I like to do now is go ahead and clean up a little bit of what's here. So I can get a brush. I will sample the color that we have here and brush over any little knobs that aren't supposed to be there. It's a good idea to do some of this cleanup here. Everything that's here you're going to have show up on your final file, and so that's not something that you want. So don't be afraid to zoom in and check and see what's here. The tool that I like to use most when I'm doing this kind of stuff is this tool here, which is called the Spot Healing Brush. You can just basically run your mouse, click your mouse over top of the imperfection, click it, and it's gone. Okay, and so the other thing that I normally will do is I will create a new layer. I'll come up here under my marquee tool, select the rectangular tool. So the marching ants show us that this area is selected. I'm going to invert that selection by going select inverse, and then I'm going to fill it with white. And the way I do that is I press D on the keyboard for default, and the shortcut to invert that is X. And you'll notice that the color that we have selected is white. And so I'm going to go into Image, Edit, Fill, and I'm going to fill it with the foreground color, which happens to be white. Click OK. If I deselect it, Command D, and all of this area that's here in the margins is absolutely white. So you don't have to worry about having a non-white area of bleed around your image. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to flatten the image again. Flatten image, and that just takes this white border that we put on and flattens it down over top of our scan. And the one other thing I want to do is I want to maybe bump up the saturation on this a little bit. The way that I do that is I go to Image, Adjustment, Hue, Saturation. And so I think it would probably be a good idea to bump up the reds on this a little bit. Well, before I do that, let me just go ahead and bump up the saturation on the whole thing, you know, another 5%. And then it looks like the reds are maybe just a little bit soft. So you can really bump that up a lot or a little bit. So I think I'm going to bring it up about 15%. That seems like that's about right. And click OK. Make sure you save. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to change the color mode, because we scan this in RGB, which is a great color mode for your computer screen, but not usable for a printer, for an offset printer. And so we're going to go from RGB, which, as you can see, it's right here. We're going to change it over to CMYK. And when we do that, we're going to lose some of the colors intensity here, but it's still going to be brighter than what it was. And I'm going to show you a preview. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's previewing what CMYK is going to look like. And you can do that by hitting Command Y. And you see up here where your artwork name is, we're in RGB, we're in 8-bit color, and this is a CMYK preview. CMYK simply stands for cyan, magenta, yellow. K stands for black. So that tells you that this is showing you what it's going to look like whenever it gets printed. So let's turn it off. See how bright that yellow is? Well, offset printing can't print it that bright. It's just what they call out of gamut. So we're going to change it over to CMYK. Okay? And so the way to do that is we're going to go to Edit, Convert to Profile. Our destination space, we're going to click on that. We're going to go up to Working CMYK USB Web-Coded SWOP version 2. So let's go ahead and click that. And then click Preview, so you can see what it's going to look like, and then hit OK. And so there you go. That is now CMYK. You can see it up here. The RGB is gone. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go over to our menu options, which is here. It's nested in your layers palette. And you're going to go down to Flatten Image. And these will just flatten right down. One thing that I should talk about a little bit is what happens if you bring your artwork in and it's not quite the way it looks in the original, and you should always have the original close by. But how do you go about making those minor adjustments to make it look as good as possible? Let's say you brought it in, scanned it in, and it's just a little washed out, or the contrast doesn't seem quite right. What do you do about it then? Well, there's a couple things we can do. One is we can go into levels, and the other is go into curves. Both of them will get us where we're going. Curves is a little more of an elegant way to get there. You have more control with it. But on something like this where you need to increase the contrast on it, levels is going to be just fine for what we need to do. So what I've done here is knock back some of the contrast so that the image is just a little bit washed out the way it might come in. And we're going to bring up the levels. The way to do that is you go under Image, Adjustments, and right up here on top is Levels. It'll bring up a little dialog box. And really what you need to be concerned with are these three triangles right here. This is kind of a visual of what your artwork looks like as far as values goes. And so what I would like to do on this is we can see that the black is really lacking here. So we take this triangle and we drag it up until it looks right. And normally what I'll do is when we're talking about areas in here that might be just a little dingy, you take the triangle that's on the right hand side, which represents the light colors, and I would drag it down. It's at 255. I'd probably bring it down no more than 5%. So that's about good there. And the one in the middle is kind of your midtones, so you can see if you drag that around what it does. So probably don't need to do anything to that. Hit OK. So here's the before, and here's the after. And that is, I think, all we're going to need to do to get this ready for print. And so now we're all ready to go. We're ready to set this into our template. And so let's go ahead and download that. Okay, well, here we are on my desktop. I've brought up the vistaprint.com website. I'll show you the way that I get to these cards, but they have a lot of different ways or different kinds of cards. But I think when I started doing this, it was around holiday time. So what I did was I went under All Products, Holiday Cards and Gifts, and selected Holiday Cards. That brings you into an area where you can select what it is that specifically that you want. They actually are very good here. They help you to decide and get right to the template that you need. So we're going to go with a folded card. So you click on that. They tell you what the options are. 5x7 is what I'm going with. Scroll down a little bit. I like their standard glossy card. It will match the other cards that I have. So that's the paper stock. The orientation on this particular card is going to be horizontal, so we'll click that. You see it's highlighted. And the quantity that I go with, normally I'll go with 20. That gives me 10 for doing my sets and 10 individual cards. Now, when I order these, I usually order them when there's a sale on. The sale is normally about 50% off. So if the price on this for these 20 cards is $35 here, it'd roughly be $17, which helps a whole lot whenever you're talking about profit margins. So, all right, we have everything selected here. So let's go ahead and click on Start Designing. That will bring you over to their design page. And let's let this load. On their design page, they will show you a lot of different layouts that they have, different templates that you can plug in your image. We're not going to use any of those. We're going to go ahead and use your complete design, upload it. So let's go ahead and do that. The next upload page, you see we're on holiday card, folded 5x7, standard glossy, front side. Okay, now that it's loaded, I'm going to go over to View Upload Specs and Templates. See it right here. That's going to give you your template to make sure that everything is exactly in place before you get here. So let's click on that. Going to bring up a little pop-up menu. And you know, this is a good idea to kind of go through and find out what they're looking for. But you know, do that when you have an extra moment. But I'm going to scroll down here to software templates. You can have a template for Photoshop, for Illustrator, for Acrobat Distiller. But I'm going to go over to Photoshop, Invitations, Folded 5x7. But once you click that, you'll notice that a little blue hot link has come up, and we're going to download this horizontal template. So go ahead and just click on that. It's the Photoshop one. It's going to show me where it's at. It's right here. I went ahead and double clicked it, and when I did that, it opened in Photoshop. And this is what it looks like. Let me close my layers menu. Okay, so it's a little bit confusing, but let me just show you. The red is where the card itself is going to be trimmed. So that's all excess. The blue marker here shows you where it's safe to have your artwork go to. Now, my artwork is not going to what they call bleed over the edge. If it did bleed over the edge, you wanted to make sure that it goes out to where that red line is, or all the way out. but since mine is not bleeding, I want to make sure that it's within this area where it shows you the blue trim or the blue safe margin. They want it to be in CMYK, which we just did, 300 DPI, which is what we did when we scanned it in. And let me show you how this is set up. They have it set up so that the guides here are in place. You can turn them off and on, and they have a place for you to go ahead and put your design. So let's go over to our artwork, the way we brought it in. You select your selection tool here. It's the very first tool. And I'm going to click on this artwork, and I'm going to drag it onto our template, holding down the Shift key. When I hold down the Shift key, that's going to center it on top of our other file. So let's go ahead and click, drag, and hold down the Shift key, and the other one pops up, release, and we see that the file itself is here, but it's rather large. I'm going to make sure that this artwork layer is selected, and so I'm going to go up under Edit, Transform, Free Transform, and that will bring up these handles. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag this down. We're going to bring that down right about to where the blue safe area is, and I see that mine is just a little bit too high. So I'm going to hold down the Option key while I drag in the center here, and that's going to bring both areas up, and I'm going to drag the same way out until I feel like it looks just about the way I want it to. It's okay if this isn't exactly in the same proportions as it was before. Right about here looks pretty good. Just want to get it so that you feel like, yeah, that looks centered and looks the way I want it to look. All right, hit return, and it will go ahead and commit that transformation. And I'm going to bring this layer 1 down below the guides, and I'm going to turn the guides off. And you'll see they already have these blue guides that are non-printing. They won't print, but it shows you where the trim area is. And that looks pretty good. And so once we have that, let's go ahead and flatten this down. Flatten image. It's going to ask you if you want to discard the hidden layers. I would say okay. And so we're going to save this off, change the name, and remember where it's at, because this is going to be what they print from. So in order to do a save as, we're going to go under File, Save As, and let's go ahead and save this to my desktop. All right, so let's just put it there. I'm going to save it as a JPEG. Since we're not going to be opening and closing and saving it off, JPEG is fine. Front printer. On the desktop, and go ahead and save. You want to save it as the largest file you can, and that's about 5.5 megs. So click OK. Using this file here with these little crop marks, you want to go ahead and make your back panel. And I'll show you my back panel right here. Let me turn that off. I've done this previously, and I left the template here so that I know exactly where that's going to trim to. But just make sure that when you save this off, you turn off any template, and then you do a save as. Save it to the desktop. I'm going to do a JPEG, and we're going to do back panel note card 5x7. Save it off. Largest file you can. Click OK. And now we can see that our files are saved to my desktop. And so those are the ones that we're going to print from. So now what we do, we go back into Vistaprint. We're going to tell them that we're going to upload our design from our computer. And we're going to choose the images. Go to the desktop and you see, oh crap, rattlesnake front printer. So that's the one we're going to go with for the front. Going to open it. And just wait for it to upload. Okay, so it tells us that the image looks great. The resolution is fine. Everything fits in here. All right, so this looks good. Let's go on to the inside of the card. And you can do a full color inside if you choose to. You can have it say whatever you want it to. You can do it grayscale, full color, or blank. All right, so let's go on to the back of the card. So we're on the back side, and we're going to go with image, and we're going to upload it from our computer just like we did the front side. And we choose the image, which was back panel note card. Go ahead and open that, and it should upload pretty quickly. And it says here to place your image, drag it onto your design. All right. And so, let's take a look at how this is going to look. Let's go ahead and hit preview. So here's how the front looks. I suppose this is supposed to say inside, and then the back side, that's how that's going to look. And we'll do a side by side. Front side, inside, back side. All right, and then you do review and purchase. So the next thing that they're going to want you to do is to review your card. Make sure that it looks just like you think it's going to. You can view this larger if you want to review it. You'll have to go through these steps again, but it's no big deal. Better to be safe and know what you're getting rather than be surprised when you open up the package. There's the back side. You check the I have reviewed and approve the design. Click next. All right, and then they're going to ask you to pick your envelopes. I find that the standard white envelopes, the 20 that we'd get for free, are just fine. So normally I go ahead and do that. Then they're going to try to sell you a bunch of other things. You can look through there and see if there's anything you want. Generally there is nothing that, and I just skip this. I always skip that. Looks like they've got a new promo box. I would skip that. And the nice thing is they don't have them automatically checked. You actually have to check them. So it's okay to just skip through. What you can do now is make sure everything looks right up here and then go to checkout. And so that is where I'm going to leave you. And it's just a matter of you putting in your credit card information and having them send them out to you. I've been very happy with the color. They match the colors pretty good. I have never had to call them and say, you know, these colors are horrible. I do make sure that my monitor is calibrated. It's just one of those things that I do. Being in illustration and fine art, you need to make sure that your colors on the screen of your computer are what is going to actually print. So, but that's another video for another day. So if you have any questions for things that I maybe glossed over or skipped completely, or you're not clear, go ahead and leave them down in the comments, and I'm happy to answer them for you. Anyways, thanks for viewing, and we'll see you down the road.